Good morning, delegates. We'll be starting soon. Would you please take your seats? Thank you. Good morning, all. Good morning, all. I invite you to take your seats. I hope you had a restful or somewhat restful weekend. And I pray that you're coming here today with a spirit of compromise, a spirit of resolution where we will work together to get the best possible outcome. So I will convene today's session of Working Group 2. Today we will begin with reports from the groups that met since we last convened this working group. First, I would like to ask one of the co-chairs of the contact group on marine and coastal biodiversity to report on their work. First, I'll invite the co-chair from Seychelles, Marie-May Jeremy, to report on the discussions on the conservation and sustainable use of marine and coastal biodiversity. The floor to Seychelles, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and good morning, colleagues. The contact group on marine and coastal biodiversity, which I had the pleasure of co-chairing with Renee Sauvé of Canada, was tasked with addressing the issue of the conservation and sustainable use of marine and coastal biodiversity and ecologically or biologically significant marine areas, including the further work. As per your instructions, 2 non-papers were made available for the contact group discussions. The group met on the evenings of the 8th, the 9th, and the 10th of December. And with respect to the issue of the conservation and sustainable use of marine and coastal biodiversity, the contact group held productive discussions, and the non-paper and broad consensus was generally found on the majority of the issue discussed under this topic. However, a small number of brackets still remain in the conference room paper, specifically in preambular paragraph 2 and in paragraphs 2, 7, 10, 11, 13, and 22. We had a good attempt of trying to work through some of those, but the ones that remained, we really hope that delegations were able to use the intervening period since the last time we had our contact group to find agreement on this bracketed text. Thank you. I don't know if you want us to take the report for both papers or just on the first one at this point, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Seychelles. Just a minute. Let me just consult. Thank you. Thank you, Seychelles. We have gotten assistance from your colleague to help with the next report, so thank you very much. So now we will have the report on discussions on EBSA's further work, and I'll give the floor to Renee Sauvé from Canada. Canada, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. As noted, we did have those 3 contact group sessions in which we did discuss the 2 non-papers. The contact groups were very well attended with a broad selection of delegations and regional representatives. With respect to the issue of ecologically and biologically significant marine areas for their work, the contact group held productive discussions on the non-paper There was a broad consensus on the majority of the issues discussed under the topic. However, some brackets do remain in the conference room paper. Specifically, the footnote to preambular paragraph 2, paragraph 4 and its 2 footnotes, the alternative to 4, that is to say 4 alt and 4 alt bis, paragraph 9, and all of the annexes which are referenced in paragraph 4. Because of this, Chair, I feel like I should probably provide a little bit of detail with respect to paragraph 4 and its accompanying annexes, and the alternative, which is captured in paragraphs 4 alt and 4 alt bis. Paragraph 4 and the annexes refer to the modalities for modifying descriptions of existing EBSAs and modalities for describing new EBSAs. Due to insufficient time available to discuss these annexes, the contact group agreed to shift its focus to developing new text regarding intercessional work on this topic, with a view to finalizing discussions on this issue at COP16. The results of these contact group discussions on how to ensure adequate consideration of the range of issues in the intercessional period is outlined in 4 alt and 4 alt bis. However, a delegation indicated that it was prepared to accept the modalities as currently contained in the annexes, and as such did not want to delete paragraph 4 and the option of implementing the modalities now. Therefore, it was necessary, Chair, to include both the option of doing intercessional work with the aim of finalizing the modalities by COP16 as contained in alternative paragraph 4, and we needed to keep paragraph 4 that links to the annexes in the non-paper that were not discussed in the contact group. Thus, paragraph 4 alt and 4 alt bis are alternative options to paragraph 4 and the annexes. I hope that provides some clarity to the room, Chair.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much to that group for their hard work and spirit of compromise. We will be considering the 3 marine CRPs later during this session. Now I would like to ask the co-chairs of the contact group on CP items 7A and B to kindly report on their work. The report will be delivered by Ms. Rita Andorko from Hungary. Hungary, you have the floor. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. The contact group on Cartagena Protocol on biosafety, item 7 on the implementation plan and the capacity building action plan met for the second time on Saturday, 10 December from 12 to 2 p.m. in the afternoon. Over the 2 sessions, the group considered 2 draft decisions. One, presenting the implementation plan, and the other, presenting the capacity building action plan. All regions were represented and delegates actively contributed to our fruitful discussions. Due to the excellent spirit of compromise in the group, we were able to resolve all bracketed text in the 2 plans. As a result, both the implementation plan and the capacity building action plan contain clean text only. We consider the result, Madam Chair, an impressive achievement given that more than 100 references were bracketed in the draft decisions we started with. Madam Chair, unfortunately, the group could not agree on all outstanding issues in the operative paragraphs of the 2 draft decisions. In particular, the group could not agree on wording concerning resources. As a result, the draft decision on the implementation plan and the draft decision on the capacity building action plan both contain bracketed paragraphs. After an initial exchange, the group was of the view that these issues would best be discussed under item 10 of the agenda of the COPMOP on matters related to the financial mechanism and resources. In this light, Madam Chair, we would encourage you to allow parties to discuss these outstanding issues when considering CRP 10 on the financial mechanism and resources. In addition, references to the adoption of the respective plans, as well as references to the post-2020 GBF and to the long-term strategic framework for the capacity building and development, in the operative part of the true draft decisions still appear between brackets. We are optimistic that agreement can be reached on these references, providing an understanding can be found on outstanding issues. Madam Chair, I would like to thank my co-chair Rigobert Knapp from Cameroon for his helpful co-chairing, and also the staff of the Secretariat for their continuous help during the discussions in the contact group. And I would like to thank the members of the contact group once again for showing great motivation and ambition to move forward towards the adoption of these key instruments that are to facilitate the implementation of the Cartagena Protocol in the next decade. Thank you very much, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And to your co-chair, thank you. I'd also like to thank, as I said, those who participate in these meetings of the contact group, allowing us to be able to consider the CRPs on the items today. As you will recall, a Friends of the Chair on Invasive Alien Species met on Saturday. I will ask the facilitator to kindly report on the work of the group. Misenka Baradavonik of Bosnia and Herzegovina, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The Friends of Chair on COP Agenda Item 21 on invasive alien species met once on 10 December 2022 from 11:45 to 1:20 p.m. The group completed its work swiftly by considering and resolving all of the bracketed text. Interventions were held from 17 parties. General discussion centered on the parameters of the peer review of the annexes, inclusion of diverse social and cultural values of biodiversity, and the EPBES thematic assessment of invasive alien species when assessing the costs, benefits, and prioritization of management of invasive alien species, methods such as engineered gene drives to manage invasive alien species, the work of the invasive species specialist group of the IUCN and the International Plant Protection Convention, requests to the Executive Secretary, including collaboration with the World Tourism Organization. Madam Chair, I would like to sincerely thank the group for their focused interventions and for their willingness to compromise, and the Secretariat for their support. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate the work that was done in this group. And we looked at the CRP on invasive alien species later today. Finally, a contact group on IPBES also met. It was co-chaired by the chair of SAPSTA, Ezekiel Benitez, and Janina Heim of Germany. I would like to ask one of the co-chairs to kindly report to us. Germany, you have the floor. Germany.
Thank you, Chair. We had one session of this contact group on Saturday, the 10th December, from 7:30 p.m. to 10:45 p.m. The group was able to make good progress, only going over the 3 hours by 15 minutes, and producing a clean version of the text, which is the basis of the CRP that you have before you. The contact group was chaired by Ezekiel Benitez and myself. I would like to thank all of the parties that participated for their positive collaboration in this group. I would also like to thank Anne-Larie Gaudry, the Executive Secretary of IPBES, for participating in the session and answering questions related to the work of IPBES. During the contact group, the non-paper, which was prepared based on the discussions of the plenary session of Working Group 2 Thursday morning, provided a good starting point for the deliberations. The contact group completed the discussions of the draft decision text as well as the annex. The following conclusions were made. On the draft decision text, there was good consensus in terms of resolving a number of brackets related to the work of IPBES. The bulk of the discussion in the group was on the annex. The contact group spent considerable time discussing the annex, which contains specific requests from CBD-COP to IPBES concerning the second global assessment, as well as fast-track assessments to be undertaken in the next few years. The contact group found ways to address the needs of parties and prepare the final list of requests, which is now included in the CRP. Overall, the contact group discussions went well and successfully lifted all of the brackets, and the co-chairs are glad to be presenting the conference room paper for the consideration of this working group. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Appreciate the great work that you did with this. So we will now start the consideration of CRPs with the CRP on IPBES. So therefore, we are now looking at CRP 7 on COP item 15A, Program of Work of the IPBES. So please bring it before you. Regarding this document, please note 2 corrections that will be made by the Secretariat when preparing the L document. The first correction will be on paragraph 7, the 3rd line, and this should say the report of the co-sponsored workshop. Therefore, the words report of the before co-sponsored were accidentally deleted and will be added. So on paragraph 3, the 3rd line should say the report of the co-sponsored workshop. The second correction is on page 3, footnote 5, which was included by mistake in the CRP as it was deleted in the work of the contact group. So page 3, footnote 5 should have been deleted. Apologies. Colleagues, you have now before you CRP, which incorporates the views from the discussions that were under the working group last Thursday, as well as a result of the work of the contact group. We will now go through this document para by para. CRP 7. Starting at the beginning, the conference of the parties. Recalling decisions, we're looking at that paragraph, recalling decisions. I see no request to the floor. That paragraph is approved. Also recalling. I see no request to the floor. That preambulatory paragraph is approved. Paragraph 1, welcomes. I see no request to the floor. Paragraph 1 is approved. Paragraph 2 also welcomes. I see no request to the floor. Paragraph 2 is approved. Paragraph 3 further welcomes. I see no request to the floor. Paragraph 3 is approved. Paragraph 4 welcomes the approval. I see no request to the floor. Paragraph 4 is approved. Paragraph 5 also welcomes the approval. I see no request to the floor. Paragraph 5 is approved. Paragraph 6 takes note of the report. I see no request to the floor. Paragraph 6 is approved. Paragraph 7 welcomes the cooperation. I see no request to the floor. Paragraph 7 is approved. Paragraph 8 notes that the, I see no request to the floor. Paragraph 8 is approved. Paragraph 9, requests the, I see no request to the floor. Paragraph 9 is also approved. Paragraph 10 also requests. I see no request to the floor. Paragraph 10 is approved. Paragraph 11 invites the. I see no request to the floor. Paragraph 11 is approved. Paragraph 12 notes the. I see no request to the floor. Paragraph 12 is approved. So we'll now look at the annex taken as a whole. So we're looking at the entire annex, both Section A and Section B as a whole. I see no requests. I see a request from the floor from Turkey. Turkey, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Firstly, Turkey would like to thank the Secretariat for the preparation of the CRP and its annexes. Turkey welcomes the CRP and the request from the Convention regarding the second global assessment as well as fast-track assessments. We only have an editorial edit for the heading of Annex B. We kindly ask for the deletion of methodological and thematic from the heading to have compatible text. We appreciate the efforts made by the platform and highly support this collaboration between the Convention and the platform to establish a scientific and technical basis for the follow-up to the post-2020 Global Biodiversity Framework after 2030. Thank you.
Thank you, Turkey. I would like to remind yourself and other parties that time was taken to go through this, and work was done to make sure we could come up with an agreed text. However, I'll put it to the parties. Considering Turkey's proposal to delete methodological and thematic from the title, I put it to the floor. What do parties think about this? I see no requests for the floor. Therefore, it appears that it's something we can live with. So therefore, methodological and thematic will be removed from the title. Thank you, parties. So therefore, the entire annex as is with the change for the title of B. I see Ghana has a request for the floor. Ghana, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We'll be very grateful to the distinguished delegate through you to explain why this particular phrase must be removed from the text.
Thank you, Ghana. We will ask Turkey to take the floor again. Turkey. Yes, thank you.
Can you please repeat the question? If it is the necessity of the removal from the title, our answer is it's just because of the have a compatible text, as we already deleted methodological and thematic from the text itself. We are requesting the removal from the heading as well, but we can leave, or we are also comfortable with the title as it is.
Ghana, is that acceptable? I see no request for the floor. I see you back again. Ghana, you have the floor.
No, Chair, if it doesn't make any difference to the text following, then that's okay. But if it does, then we are concerned that it is removed.
So let's hear from the Secretariat, and then we will hear from Egypt, then Peru. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. In the contact group, sorry, in the Yes, in the contact group session, the contact group decided to delete those words from items 1, 2, 3, and 4. So in the original version of this non-paper, it had a fast-track thematic and methodological assessment listed, and many of the people in the room thought that IPBES could determine the type of assessment, and so those words were deleted. And so I think Turkey is trying to propose that for consistency's sake, these words be removed from the whole document. And in the contact group, I think that maybe it wasn't noticed in that section B, and so now it matches.
Thank you, Secretariat. We'll now hear from Egypt, followed by Peru. Egypt, you have the floor.
Good morning, everyone. Based on our experience on IPBES assessment for many, many years, the methodological approach is one of the most important things to explain how things go. So we are in favor with our colleagues from Africa not to delete this. Thank you.
Thank you, Egypt. Let's hear from Peru. Peru, you have the floor.
Muchísimas gracias, señora.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. We too would like to join in the request put forth by Africa. It's true that it points out that some terms have been eliminated, but still I see that in paragraph 3, it starts with fast-track methodology. So we think that methodological and technical thematic considerations should remain. Thank you.
Thank you. So we are hearing from a few parties. We would like to hear from IPBES. Yes, IPBES, can you provide some clarifications? Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Good morning. I'm happy to clarify. So during the contact group discussion, it was explained that IPBES has different types of assessments that it can conduct. They can be methodological, they can be thematic, they can be regional, they can be global, and that the original text included some specifications on the nature of these assessments as the CBD Secretariat just pointed out. But then it was recommended to remove those specifications on whether a particular assessment should be methodological or should be thematic, and to leave this to IPBES plenary to decide on what was the best type of assessment. This is why in the paragraph 1, 2, and 3, and 4 under section B, it's just fast-track assessment, but you no longer have fast-track methodological or fast-track thematic assessment. But then in cleaning up the text, the Secretariat forgot to remove the following fast-track methodological or thematic assessment. It should be, to be coherent with the changes that were made, it should only be the following fast-track assessment should be considered, just to be coherent with the discussions and with the fact that those words were removed from the B1, B2, B3, and B4. And so the IPBES plenary would then be considering the adequate type of assessment that would be needed for this fast track for assessment. I hope this clarifies. Thank you.
Thank you, IPBES. Thank you very much. So therefore, based on what IPBES has explained and based on the events that took place within the contact group, is it possible that we can, and putting forward to the parties, is it possible that we can go forward with removing methodological and thematic, those words from the title and that first preambulatory bit of B? Is this something that I can propose that parties can accept based on IPBES's intervention? And also the discussions that would have come out of the contact group. Is this something we can accept? And we'll ask specifically Ghana, Egypt, and Peru. Is this something we can accept? Ghana, Peru, and then followed by Peru. Ghana, may I hear from you, please?
Yes, Madam President. Based on the statement from the EBSAs Secretariat, we are okay to go along with it.
Thank you, Ghana. I appreciate your spirit. Thank you. Peru, may we hear from you as well?
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Indeed, with the clarification and specifications of the Secretariat of IPBES, it's much clearer for us. Thank you.
Thank you, Peru. Thank you again. Thank you very much. I see Egypt does not want to take the floor, and I assume, therefore, that they're okay with it. Yes? Yes, thank you. So therefore, I bring it to you again. Annex. The annex, both A and B. With the changes made, may we approve this? This is acceptable. I see no request for the floor. Therefore, the annex is approved. Therefore, CRP 7 in its entirety is approved. An L document we prepared for the consideration by the COP. Thank you. We will now turn our attention to COP item 21, invasive alien species. So this is CRP 5. So it's a lengthy CRP. So let's now look at it now before us, CRP 5. So we have before us the text coming from the SAPSA 24, as well as the outcomes of the Friends of the Chair. We will now go through it para by para. The first is the conference of the parties. I'll take that in conjunction with the second preambulatory paragraph, noting with concern. I see a request for the floor from the UK. The UK, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. A very minor grammatical change. It says here in the English version that noting with concern that invasive alien species is one of the main drivers. I think it should say are one of the main drivers. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, UK. With that editorial correction, may we approve that preambulatory paragraph? I see no request for the floor. Moving on to the next preambulatory paragraph, noting the increasing. I see no request for the floor. Moving on to the following preambulatory paragraph, recognizing. I see no request for the floor. The next one, emphasizing the need. I see no request for the floor. Now looking at our preambulatory paragraph, recalling decisions. I see no request for the floor. We will now begin with para 1, the preambulatory bit takes note of. I see no request for the floor. Preambulatory bit is approved. Para 1A, methods 4. I see no request for the floor. Moving on to para 1B, methods, tools, and measures. I see no request for the floor. That is approved. Para 1C, methods, tools, and strategies. I see no request for the floor on that. That is also approved. Para 1D, use of existing. I see no request for the floor. Para 1D is approved. Para 1E, additional advice. I see no request for the floor. Para 1E is approved. So para 1, its entirety, is approved. Para 2, the preambulatory bit requests the Executive Secretary. I see no request for the floor. The preambulatory bit is approved. Entire paragraph 2. I see no request for the floor. Paragraph 2 is approved. Paragraph 3. I see no request for the floor. Paragraph 3 is approved. Paragraph 4, welcomes. I see no request for the floor. Paragraph 4 is approved. Paragraph 5, encourages parties. I see no request for the floor. Paragraph 5 is approved. Paragraph 6 urges parties. I see there's a request for the floor from the UK. UK, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. Another very minor change. I thought in the Friends of the Chair, we changed this text so that it read, urges parties and invites other governments, which is the fairly standard formulation as used in the previous paragraph. So that is just a very minor suggestion from us. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, UK. Therefore, with that change to read, urges parties and invites other governments to foster. I see no request to the floor, so para 6 without amendment is approved. Para 7 invites the Secretariat. I see no request to the floor. Para 7 is approved. Para 8 notes that the I see no request to the floor. Para 8 is approved. Para 9 invites parties. I see no request to the floor. Para 9 is approved. Para 10 takes note. I see no request to the floor. Para 10 is approved. Para 11 invites the. I see no request to the floor. Para 11 is approved. Para 12 requests the preambulatory bit. I see no request to the floor. That part is approved. 12A to prepare. I see no request to the floor. 12A is approved. 12B to collaborate with. I see no request to the floor. 12B is approved. 12C to continue collaboration. I see no request to the floor. 12C is approved. 12D to continue and enhance. I see no request to the floor. 12D is approved. 12E to develop on the basis. I see no request to the floor. 12E is approved. 12F to collaborate with. I see no request to the floor. 12F is approved. 12G to report the. I see no request to the floor. 12G is approved. So therefore para 12 is approved in its entirety. So I bring you for you Annex 1 in its entirety for you to consider. So Annex 1 with the several sections within it. I bring before you Annex 1 in its entirety. I see no request to the floor. Annex 1 is approved. I bring before you Annex 2 with its sections. Annex 2, I see no request to the floor. Annex 2 is approved. I bring before you Annex 3 with its sections. I see no request to the floor. Annex 3 is approved. I bring before you Annex 4. I see no request to the floor. Annex 4 is, I see Cook Islands. Cook Islands, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. In Annex 4, Para 3, it seems like it's a repeat also in Annex 5, Para 2. And I think this paragraph best sits in Para 2 of Annex 5 because it talks about risk to communication. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Cook Islands. Give me a minute, please. This has been noted and will be considered for peer review. Is that okay, Cook Islands? It's been noted. Yes, thank you. You want the floor? Yes, go right ahead.
Yes, this is okay.
Thank you, Cook Islands. Appreciate it. Thank you. So considering the noting of what Cook Islands has said, I bring before you Annex 4. So Annex 4 with the noting is approved. Annex 5, I bring before you Annex 5 with its sections. I see no requests to the floor. Annex 5 is approved. Annex 6 with its sections. I see a request to the floor from Egypt. Egypt, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We have noticed that all of these annexes, they start with draft. Are these drafts will be continuing or will be removed in L document? Thank you.
Thank you, Egypt. The reason why it says draft is because they are to be prayer reviewed, if I understand correctly. Egypt, is this explanation satisfactory? Egypt, you have the floor.
Yes, Madam Chair, it is satisfactory.
Thank you very much. So therefore, Annex 6, I bring before you with its sections. I see no request to the floor. Annex 6 is approved. Therefore, the annexes are approved, and therefore, this decision is approved. So then CRP 5 on invasive alien species is approved. Thank you. An L document will now be prepared by consideration by the COP. Thank you. We will now turn our attention to CRP 6 on COP item 24, biodiversity and agriculture. A contact group met on Thursday, the 8th of December in the evening and worked on the text in brackets throughout the recommendation, as well as the annex. I would like to thank the co-chairs, Mr. Hendrik Segers from Belgium and Mr. Eric Okuri from Ghana, and the parties who participated in this group for their very, very hard work. We have before us a draft decision, which includes a combination of texts previously adopted of SAFSA 24 and new text proposals agreed upon in the contact group. You will note that 3 paragraphs in the decision and 1 paragraph in the annex still contain brackets. As we go through this CRP, I will ask if we could lift those brackets. Once again, I would encourage us not to reopen issues that have already been agreed after long discussions. We will now go through para by para. So we have before us CRP 6, biodiversity and agriculture. And it begins with the conference of the parties. I take that one in conjunction with the preambulatory paragraph recalling decisions. I see no requests for the floor for that bit. That is approved. The next preambulatory paragraph acknowledging the importance. I see no requests for the floor. That is approved. Preambulatory paragraph recognizing that activities. I see no request to the floor. That is also approved. Paragraph 1 adopts the plan of action. I see no request to the floor. Paragraph 1 is approved. Paragraph 2 takes note of the report. I see no request to the floor. Paragraph 2 is approved. Paragraph 3 encourages parties. I see no request to the floor. Paragraph 3 is approved. Paragraph 4 urges parties. I see no request to the floor. Paragraph 4 is approved. Paragraph 5 encourages parties. I see a request to the floor for paragraph 5. Argentina. Argentina, you have the floor.
Muchas gracias, señora.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. In this paragraph, there's still a bracket. Other managed ecosystems is bracketed. We would ask to please delete this text because it unnecessarily opens up the scope of this decision. Thank you.
Thank you, Argentina. I would like to hear from parties. How would they feel about deleting the text? So then it would read into agricultural systems and other relevant sectors. So we're looking at, I see we have two parties who would like to speak. We have Egypt followed by Japan. Egypt.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We are not in favor of deleting anything here, but we are in favor of deleting the brackets rather than anything else. After all, the whole issue of soil biodiversity is a very complicated thing. So if you don't look at it at the level of ecosystem, it could be a problem. So we are in favor of deleting the brackets only. Thank you.
Thank you, Egypt. May we hear from Japan? Japan, may we hear from you, please? The floor is yours.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Japan would like to echo what the previous speaker said, to lift the brackets, but not the text. As already mentioned, soils can be under diverse systems, including agriculture or other relevant sectors, as well as many other well-managed systems. Our preference is keeping that text. Thank you.
Thank you, Japan. We'll hear from Paraguay. Paraguay, you have the floor.
Muy buenos días.
Good morning, one and all. Thank you, Madam Chair. Paraguay supports the proposal of Argentina, which is to eliminate what's in the bracketed part. Thank you.
Thank you, and we'll hear from Egypt. Egypt, you have the floor.
Can we ask why the rationale behind deleting this? Because it is not very clear to us. Thank you.
Thank you, Egypt. May we hear from Argentina? Argentina, you have the floor.
Muchas gracias.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. The reason is that we think that the scope is broad enough, including other relevant sectors. The document is on biodiversity and agriculture, not biodiversity in all ecosystems. That's why we think that the reference to other sectors, relevant sectors, covers the concerns that were expressed here by colleagues such as the colleague of Japan. Thank you.
Thank you. So therefore, it appears we have two views. So therefore, we need compromise. So we have to figure out compromise text. So I need those parties, Argentina and Egypt, others can join, of course, to please work out some compromise text, because we cannot move forward. We don't wish to, or the best case scenario is to not move forward to an L document with brackets when we know that we can work towards some resolution text. So therefore, I would like to perhaps park para 5 and ask that those two parties, of course, they can be joined by others, try and work on possible compromising text so we can see if we can resolve those brackets in some fashion. Is that acceptable? Yes, I see a nod. I hope Egypt is nodding because I cannot find them at this point. Oh, there we go. Thank you very much, Egypt. So paragraph 5. Oh, I see Peru. Peru, you've asked for the floor. Peru.
Gracias.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. I understand the concern about the paragraph, and I'd like to make my comment on paragraph 7. The idea of broadening to other ecosystems is an opportunity, because many ecosystems could be impacted, and they have a great wealth of biodiversity, which might be impacted. So I would recommend withdraw punishment, because what we really want is to work at different levels economically and different ecosystems and protect the diversity of the soil. I think that's the source concern here. This characterizing of other biodiversity systems, ecosystems, might help us to recover ecosystems with that very biodiversity. Thank you.
Thank you, and I hope the parties will take your clarifications or information into consideration when coming up with compromising text. Thank you. So therefore, we have parked 5 with the hope that Argentina and Egypt will get to us. Thank you. So para 6 looks at invites academic, and we can see that in brackets at the end, it says in accordance with the convention. So therefore, I'm going to propose, can we delete the brackets? Is this something that we can work with in deleting the brackets? I see Argentina has requested the floor again. Argentina, followed by Guatemala.
Muchas gracias.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. We feel that this reference is one that maybe some parties don't want to have in it, but we think that is in keeping with the modalities in terms of transfer technology and building capacity. And we think it's a useful reference in this context. Thank you.
So to be clear, you want to keep the text, yes? That's what you're saying. Okay, thank you. So therefore, let's hear from Guatemala, followed by the EU. Guatemala.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Guatemala supports Argentina in the idea of keeping the wording and eliminating the brackets. Thank you.
Thank you, Guatemala, for being clear. EU, can we hear from you, please? EU? Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Mrs. Chair. And just as an editorial comment, as when we keep the bracket, the correct language should be of soil biodiversity and development, consistent with Article 20. Thank you, Mrs. Chair.
Could you clarify? So you were saying instead of in accordance with the convention, it would be the wording you provided? To be clear, I'm not sure.
No, it would just be the addition of the term and development before the bracket.
So can you read what it would say so that we all have it, please? So it would say in...
From here? And assessment of soil biodiversity and development consistent with Article 20 of the Convention. No, are we wrong?
Is this para 6?
Oh, I'm wrong. Sorry, I will come back.
All right. Thank you. Okay. So therefore, let us hear from Honduras. Honduras, you have the floor.
Gracias, señora presidenta.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Honduras also is in favor of keeping what's in the brackets that's being discussed. Thank you.
Thank you. So what I'm hearing is that we can remove the brackets. So we can put forward paragraph 6 without the brackets, so it just keeps all the text, so it continues technology transfer capacity building in accordance with the convention. I see the EU is asked for the floor. EU, please.
Yeah, thank you, Mrs. Chair. Sorry, I completely mixed up the paragraphs. What I was suggesting was the term transfer and capacity building, and then to include and development as an editorial comment to make it common language. Thank you.
So with this added language, technology transfer and capacity building and development, well, it'd be technology transfer, capacity building and development in accordance with the convention, the added text. Can we hear what parties think on this, or you can say that you're okay by saying nothing? silence is consent, we can say that. So therefore, it would read capacity building and development in accordance with the convention. I see no request for the floor, therefore, para 6, with the and development and removing the brackets from the area at the end. So it would say and development in accordance with the convention. So para 6 with those amendments. I see Japan is asking for the floor. Japan?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just for clarification, is that, I'm not very much English native, but capacity building and capacity development or development is a completely independent words? I'm just like to clarify what's the intention for it. Thank you.
Thank you, Japan. Give me a minute, please. Thank you, Japan. What I understand is the terminology, capacity building and development, is what's been used together. But EU, can you give a clarification as to what you meant with that intervention, please?
Thank you, Mrs. Chair. According to our understanding, it is agreed language to use the whole terminology, including what we suggested. Thank you.
So therefore, if I understand Japan, it's the terminology that's been used throughout, where you put them together, capacity building and development. So therefore, I ask, is it something that we can work with or approve, where we have technology transfer and capacity building and development in accordance with the convention? I see no request for the floor, therefore amended 6 is approved. Thank you for your spirit of compromise. Para 7 invites the FAO. I see no request for the floor. Para 7 is approved. Para 8 invites the. I see no request for the floor. Para 8 is approved. Para 9 speaks, I see 3 sets of paragraph, so see 3 sets of brackets. So we have urges, developed country parties in brackets, and then parties is in brackets. So we'll start at the first one. May I propose removing the brackets around developed country parties? That's where I'm starting. Parties, okay, so I'm seeing requests for the floor, great. So Egypt, followed by the UK, then Switzerland. Egypt, you have the floor.
Yes, indeed, Madam Chair. We agree with you that it is very important to remove the brackets, but it could be urge developed countries or developed parties. Urge developed parties much better. Thank you.
Thank you. I see UK followed by Switzerland. UK, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. The set of brackets in this paragraph, paragraph 9, capture kind of 2 different formulations, I think. And there are some formulations we could accept and some we couldn't, and we wouldn't begin the paragraph with urging developed country parties only. There is potentially a solution to this paragraph, because I believe in the item on capacity building, they have an unbracketed text which captures the same issues that we have here and which would work from our perspective. And that would be, Chair, to rework this sentence, which captures all the kind of relevant points we think, but would read, if I may introduce this. Yes, thank you. Urges parties, comma, in accordance with Article 20, comma, and invites other governments and organizations in a position to do so, comma, to provide technical and financial support as appropriate, and it would continue then to the end of where soil biodiversity, and you could then put a full stop and delete the final set of brackets because it's been moved up to the front. So that would be our proposal, Chair. I can read that again, but as I say, it has been, I believe, kept in another draft decision which is unbracketed. So shall I read one more time? Or?
Yes, please read it one more time, and then we move. Thank you.
So it would begin, urges parties, comma, in accordance with Article 20, comma, and invites other governments and organizations in a position to do so, comma, to provide financial and technical support as appropriate, and would then continue to end immediately after soil biodiversity. So that's a kind of formulation which we hope might work and solve this problem of multiple brackets. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, UK. So let us hear from the other parties on the list. I know you also have your intervention, but I also want to hear about what you think about the proposed UK text. So we'll hear from Switzerland, followed by Colombia, then Egypt. Switzerland, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good morning, dear delegates. Switzerland thinks that the formulation as it is now is too narrow in terms of collaboration. South-South collaboration or triangular collaboration is also very important, and mentioning Article 20 so explicitly narrows the collaboration down too much. We think it's not needed to mention Article 20 specifically. For the rest of the formulation proposed by EU, we could live with it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Switzerland. Let's hear from Colombia, followed by Egypt.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would like to support the UK's intervention and proposal after the discussions that were taking place during the contact group. We did talk about these brackets, and we did come to this discussion. We did touch upon what my colleague from Switzerland is saying. And what we did not want was to start listing different modalities of cooperation because we're trying to stay away from lists, as we agreed during the contact group, and that was a very successful agreement. And we do believe that the Article 20 of the Convention states exactly what we need to abide by. So we would like to support fully the proposal made by the UK, which we also believe is a very conciliatory point and brings together all the positions that were spoken about during the contact group. Thank you.
Thank you, Colombia, for that. Egypt, we hear from Egypt, followed by Norway, then Indonesia. Egypt, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We appreciate that the whole issue of capacity building is still a matter of negotiations, but we are here for the first time that we are addressing the soil biodiversity, and many countries didn't know what kind of technology is needed and the importance of the soil biodiversity, whatever. When you restrict this to every parties, it is very difficult for us. So we are, developed countries, they should provide the technical and financial support if they want to help. We have enough of problems in resource mobilization and other things, but here it is very important that we should be very specific. We are in favor of deleting the brackets. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Egypt, we'll hear from Norway, followed by Indonesia, then Argentina.
Thank you very much, Chair. We appreciate the logic in the UK proposal and would like to support that. Thank you.
Thank you, Norway. We hear from Indonesia, followed by Argentina, then Canada. Indonesia.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Indonesia strongly support the proposal from UK. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Indonesia. We hear from Argentina, Canada, and then followed by Japan.
Muchas gracias, señora Presidenta.
Thank you very much, Chair. Well, with a view to achieving a compromise, we would support the proposal by the United Kingdom. I thank you.
Thank you. We'll hear from Canada, followed by Japan, then Brazil. Canada.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. I would like to, Canada supports the formulation proposed by the UK. Thank you.
So we'll hear from Japan, then Brazil. Japan, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Japan add another vote for UK proposal. Noting that Switzerland colleagues mentioning effectiveness of triangle or South-South cooperation, I think these are quite effective, but I believe the compromise for the text should be here. Then I fully support the UK proposal, followed by Colombia and many others. Thank you.
Thank you. Then we'll now hear from Brazil, then EU. Brazil.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The first thing I'd like to say is that we share the sentiment expressed by our colleague from Egypt. We do believe that developed countries should be providing the assistance that is described in this paragraph. And it's disappointing to see that they wanted to have this removed. Nevertheless, in a spirit to advance in this particular text, we would be willing to agree with the proposal made by the UK. Thank you.
Thank you, Brazil. Oh, there's no one. Oh, I see others. I see Bangladesh now followed by the EU. Okay, Bangladesh, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Bangladesh supports the removal of the bracket, like many other parties have mentioned. Thank you.
Bangladesh, can you clarify? So it's the removal of the brackets for developed country parties, or is that what you're saying? Bangladesh?
Yes, madam.
Okay, thank you. So we now hear from EU.
Thank you, Mrs. Chair. We thank UK for their proposal, but we also support the statement from Switzerland, and therefore would like to make a new suggestion that would read like, urges developed country parties and invites other, and then include another parties, governments and organizations in a position to do so, and goes on, and then would change consistent with Article 20 of the Convention to in accordance with the Convention, to acknowledge also other forms of cooperation. Thank you very much.
Would you repeat that again, please, so we're sure we can get it? Thank you.
Thank you. It would read, urges developed country parties and invites other parties, governments, and organizations in a position to do so. And then the last bracket would be changed to in accordance with the Convention. Thank you.
Thank you, EU. So therefore, we have a new proposal on the floor that takes into consideration some of the concerns from other parties. So I would like to hear, we have two more parties on the floor. I'd like to hear their thoughts on this new proposal, as well as what their intervention was hoped to be. Australia, followed by Egypt, then Morocco.
Thank you. Just to add our voice of support to the UK proposal, we think if a compromise has been reached on support and capacity building elsewhere, then it's appropriate to apply that compromise to a decision that is talking about the same matters, just in relation to soil biodiversity. So supporting the UK proposal in preference to the EU proposal. Thank you.
Egypt, followed by Morocco.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We are in favor of supporting the EU interventions. It is more suitable to us, provided that the last part, the last two brackets, can be removed by saying in accordance with the Convention. Thank you, Madam Chair.
And then we will hear from Morocco, and then we will work out what we'll do next. Morocco, you have the floor.
Merci, Madame la Présidente.
Thank you, Chair. we support the proposal by the European Union because I believe that's the wording which is most balanced and would represent the best possible compromise, so we support it. Thank you.
Thank you. So, okay, let's hear from Mongolia and then Cote d'Ivoire, and then we will speak about how we'll move forward on this. Mongolia.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mongolia supports EU. Thank you.
Then we have Cote d'Ivoire. Then last one on the list is United Republic and Tanzania. Cote d'Ivoire.
Merci beaucoup.
Thanks very much, Chair. We would like to thank Egypt for the suggested compromise, which would make it possible to have the mention of Article 20 to give an idea who would be contributing. So that's quite clear, and we are thankful to Egypt for this compromise solution. Thank you.
Thank you. I see, okay, Tanzania, then Ethiopia. Tanzania. Tanzania, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. We are in agreement with the text that has been proposed by the EU the last time because it is embracing all the interests that were proposed by Egypt on behalf of countries that are not as developed. We meet to appreciate that some people are more capable than others. Those who are endowed should help those who are less endowed in the spirit of coming to a universal biodiversity balance for the good of humanity, not just one country, not just one region, not just one part of the world, but the whole world. For that reason, we would work with the proposed text that has just been submitted by the EU, and notwithstanding or forgetting what was said by Egypt, stressing on the need for the developed to see it as their duty to assist those that are not as capable. Thank you very much, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. So let's hear from Ethiopia to round this out. Ethiopia, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We also support the idea forwarded by Egypt and also the proposal by EU, since this would promote genuine partnership and support among parties. Thank you, Madam.
Thank you, Ethiopia. So we have to have a compromise. So we have the UK-EU text. So therefore, we need to meet and discuss about what can be the compromise between those two texts that will work for parties. So therefore, I'm asking the UK, EU, we're asking Switzerland, Egypt, Brazil, Argentina, and Japan to meet. Of course, others can join, please. I didn't remember to, probably didn't write down all, but I don't want too big a group, but perhaps just a few more can join. But please, I would like you to please come up with compromise text for para 9, please. UK, EU, and then the supporting parties, because we have those two bits of text. So please, is this something that's acceptable? Please, I need you to come up with text that can probably work for us all to move forward. Yes? I see Egypt. Yes, Egypt.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Can we have just a few minutes break to be able to finish? Because not many countries have many delegations as EU or UK. Thank you.
Thank you. So therefore, I'm proposing then that let's finish those many paragraphs, finish this particular, not finish it, but complete going through the CRP, and then we take a break, and then those groups can meet. Is that acceptable? Yes, I'm seeing nods, so thank you for agreeing to do that. So far we have 2 parked paras, para 5 and para 9. Thank you. So let's look at para 10. Oh, I see Antigua and Barbuda. You would like to take the floor, Antigua and Barbuda.
Thank you, Madam Chair. If you can go to in same para 9, on line 3, where it has developing country parties, if you could place comma and place in particular least developed countries and small island developing states, as well as countries in transition. With economies in transition, thank you.
Thank you, Antigua and Barbuda. So I'll ask you to join the group with the EU and the UK and Egypt and the others. Right, thank you. So we are now, oh, I see Colombia. Colombia, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to highlight that during the contact group, we had this conversation. That was precisely why Article 20 is mentioned within this paragraph, precisely to not have to list what my colleague from Antigua and Barbuda just said, and to streamline this one paragraph. So I also see the merit in EU's proposal, and I'm fine with that. But maybe the mention of Article 20 specifically, among other relevant articles from the convention, could be a way to kind of bring UK's and EU's together, because I do find a merit in both of them. Just maybe taking into consideration what Antigua and Barbuda just said, the mention of Article 20 is quite important in this paragraph, also maintaining coherence with what was said and what was agreed on in capacity building yesterday. Thank you.
Thank you, Colombia, for your statement. And please, Colombia, I would like you to join the group as well, so that we can make sure that we continue discussions and not reopen anything that the contact group may have decided that we already agreed on. Thank you. Thank you. So we have Part 9. So we will move on to Para 10. So may we move on to Para 10? Yes, yes. Okay, great. So we are on Para 10. It doesn't have bracket. It begins with invites. I see no requests for the floor for Para 10. I see Antigua and Barbuda has a request. You may take the floor, Antigua and Barbuda.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would like to place again in line 3, when where it has developing countries, comma, in particular least developed countries and small island developing states, as well as countries with economies in transition. Thank you.
Thank you, Antigua and Barbuda. So we put before you Para 10 with the amendment on line 3, in particular for developing, in particular for developing countries, and we'll have the secretary read it. Hold a minute. The secretary is asking for Antigua and Barbuda to repeat the amendment. Can you take the floor, please?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So we'll take out the in particular from the front, and we'll have 4 developing countries, comma, then in particular least developed countries, and it goes on. Small island developing states, as well as countries with economies in transition.
Can you repeat one more time please?
Okay, so we'll have comma after developing countries. In particular, least developed countries and small island developing states, as well as countries with economies in transition.
So we'll have the Secretariat read that for you. Secretariat.
Thank you, Chair. So the paragraph 10 reads, invites the Global Environment Facility, other donors, funding agencies in the private sector to provide financial assistance, including capacity building and development activities, for national, subnational, and regional projects for developing countries, in particular, least developed countries and small island countries, as well as countries with economies in transition. And it continues. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Secretariat. So I put forward Para 10 as read out by the Secretariat. I see no request for the floor for Para 10. Para 10 is approved. I see Japan. Japan, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Probably I didn't properly capture the proposal made by the previous speaker. If I am correct, do we see the in particular twice in this text or not? Just questioning the English text. Thank you.
Thank you. Let me have the Secretariat let you know. Just a minute.
So the paragraph 10 reads, invites the Global Environment Facility, other donors, funding agencies in the private sector to provide financial assistance, including capacity building and development activities, for national, subnational, and regional projects, for developing countries and, in particular, least developed countries, small island developing states, as well as countries with economies in transition, that address the implementation of the Plan of Action for the conservation and sustainable use of soil biodiversity. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Secretary. So therefore, I'm putting forward to the floor the Para 10 as read by the Secretary. I see no request for the floor. Para 10 is approved. Para 11 invites parties to provide. I see no request for the floor. Para 11 is approved. Sorry, EU, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mrs. Chair. In fact, we don't have a problem with Para 11, but we would like to use the chance to introduce a new Para 11 bis that would ask for a review of the draft plan of action in preparation of COP19. And if Mrs. Chair allows, we would read out our text proposal for this.
Just reminding you that this went through a lot of negotiations, but we will hear your text proposal. Go ahead.
Thank you. It would read, 11 bis requests the Executive Secretary to undertake a review of the Plan of Action 2020 to 2030 for the International Initiative for the Conservation and Sustainable Use of Soil Biodiversity, including challenges encountered, lessons learned, and taking into account the specific financial, technological, and capacity gaps faced by developing countries in supporting the conservation and sustainable use of soil biodiversity policies, and identifying any need for further action for consideration at the meeting prior to the 19th meeting of the Conference of the Parties. Thank you, Mrs. Chair.
Thank you. Could you repeat it, please, so that people can understand it? Okay, thank you. Sorry, the floor is yours.
Thank you. It would read, requests the Executive Secretary to undertake a review of the Plan of Action 2020 to 2030 for the International Initiative for the Conservation and Sustainable Use of Soil Biodiversity, including challenges encountered, lessons learned, and taking into account the specific financial, technological, and capacity gaps faced by developing countries in supporting the conservation and sustainable use of soil biodiversity policies, and identifying any need for further action for consideration at the meeting prior to the 19th meeting of the Conference of the Parties. Thank you.
Thank you. So we'll have the Secretariat read it out to make sure we have it. Secretariat.
Thank you, Chair. The paragraph 11b reads, requests the Executive Secretary to undertake a review of the Plan of Action 2020 to 2030 for the International Initiative for the Conservation and Sustainable Use of Soil Biodiversity, including challenges encountered, lessons learned, in taking into account the specific financial, technological, and capacity gaps faced by developing countries in supporting the conservation and sustainable use of soil biodiversity policies, and in identifying any need for further actions, for further consideration at the meeting prior to the 19th meeting of the Conference of the Parties. Thank you, Chair.
Therefore, I'm putting forward to you this new paragraph. I see Colombia. Colombia, you have asked for the floor. Colombia.
Thank you, Chair. I thank the EU for this proposal, although I don't think this is the moment to include a whole new paragraph on a document that has been reviewed for the last year, and there was no additions mentioned during the contact group, and that would have been the best time to suggest this new paragraph. But also, this information would be included in the national reports by parties, as well as the revised EBSAs probably, and therefore the Secretary would have this information. And I don't know if it's necessary for them to undertake a specific review on their own. So I would invite to not include that much new text on a CRP that we only have today to take out, to bring to conclusion. So I would ask to not include this new text. Thank you.
Thank you, Colombia. We'll hear from one other party and then we'll go back. Argentina, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. For the same reasons as mentioned by Colombia, we would very dearly ask the European Union to please consider the proposal. I don't think that this is an appropriate instance for adding new text. We have quite a lot of work still ahead of us, and that's why we would suggest to not include new text. Thank you.
Thank you. So therefore, I will ask the EU, in light of the request for the floor, is it possible for you to withdraw this? EU, you have the floor.
Yeah, we agree it is at a late stage that we come with this insertion, but we want to stress that we try to bring this text at an earlier stage, but within the contact group where we already read out the para, we were not allowed to introduce it because it was out of the mandate. So actually this is our first possible slot to bring in this new proposal. But if many parties are against it, we will not stick to it. But we think a review of such an ambitious plan of action is very necessary. Thank you, Mrs. Chair.
Let's hear from two other parties, Brazil and Guatemala. Brazil, let's hear from you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We do appreciate the EU's concerns on this, but at the same time, we do notice there are lots of still open paragraphs in this text, and we have a lot of work to do here today. I believe if we start reopening text, it will be like an unending discussion. So we do appreciate the concern, but we support Colombia and Argentina that perhaps this is not the right time to be introducing a completely new paragraph. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's hear from Guatemala and then Honduras, and we will come back. Guatemala, let's hear from you, please.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Guatemala endorses what Argentina and Colombia and Brazil said. This is an important issue, as referenced by the European Union, but we don't think this is the right time to be adding new text. Thank you very much and very kind.
Thank you. Thank you. Can we hear from Honduras, please, and then Japan, and then we will round this out. Honduras?
Gracias, señor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Honduras also joins the position of Argentina, Colombia, Brazil, and Guatemala. We don't think this is the right time for this. Thank you.
May we hear from Japan, and then we will come back. Japan?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Japan shares the sentiment of the GURA countries, and probably Japan can be a member of that group as well. We echo those previous speakers. We are at the paragraph, very beginning of this document, and if we continuously see this new insertion for the rest of the document, I don't think we can finish this work before midnight. So I dearly would like to appreciate the withdrawal of the EU. Thank you.
Thank you, Japan. So now I will ask EU again if they are considering, in light of the fact of the parties' concerns, is it possible for you to withdraw the text?
Thank you, Mrs. Chair. Indeed, we will withdraw our proposal, but hope to get the same flexibility from other countries when we come to the next paragraphs. Thank you.
Thank you. So we will move on now. Thank you. So therefore, we will move on to para 12. Request the Executive Secretary. Para 12. So for the request so I'm not seeing any requests for para 12. Does this mean para 12 can be accepted? It appears so. So para 12 is approved. Give me 1 minute to consult. Thank you. Thank you for your patience. So therefore, in moving forward, I'd like to bring before you the annex as a whole. I realize that in para 3, we have online, on the 4th line, we have in brackets, including through nature-based solutions, and also in brackets, including through ecosystem-based approaches. I don't think it's good use of our time to try and find a resolution for this in this medium. So we're asking that we move forward with the annex, relieving those bits in brackets. So therefore, I'm asking, along with this associated footnote, footnote 6, which is in brackets. So we're asking for the parties to approve in its state as it is now, the entire annex with para 3, that bit in brackets, including its footnote. So the entire annex is up for approval on the floor. The entire annex has several sections. Section 1, the introduction. 2, purpose and objectives. 3, scope and principles. 4, global actions. 5, key elements and activities. and 6, supporting voluntary guidance. So I'm putting before you that annex. I see no request for the floor. I see a request for the floor from Brazil. Brazil, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a point of clarification. Here in this annex, your suggestion would be to approve it without the part between brackets?
To approve it, leaving the parts in brackets. So it would remain bracketed as it is before you. The para 3 would remain the same as it is before you with that bit in brackets. That is what the proposal is, for that to be resolved at a political level.
Madam,
Sure.
if I may,
Yes.
Madam Chair, I don't believe we should be sending these documents documents with brackets. I believe the best way forward here would be to find a compromise. Of course, we all know our positions. We would be supporting, including through ecosystem approaches. The best compromise would be to delete everything that's between brackets, not making a reference to any specific approach here. I believe perhaps we can all live with that and not be sending documents with brackets to the plenary. Thank you.
So just to be clear, are you proposing then remove everything in brackets, so it would say, or would be new text proposed? So would we say on indigenous peoples and local communities and mitigate pollution? Okay, that is what your proposal is. Thank you for saying that we don't want to move forward in brackets. Thank you for that. I just did not want to have any extensive discussion on this since we have no time. I see Columbia's asked for the floor. Columbia, may we get your opinion on this? And also let's hear your intervention.
Thank you, Chair. We would not want to delete both options. Columbia had actually proposed a conciliatory wording, adding as appropriate and leaving both terms, but that wasn't so popular during the contact group either. And seeing what yesterday, the discussions in yesterday during with the targets with exactly the same language that was not able to be resolved there either. I think we do have to proceed in the way you suggested and leave those brackets there with the footnote because it will not be resolved here for sure. Thank you.
Thank you, Colombia. Let's hear from Costa Rica and then we'll move forward. Costa Rica, you have the floor.
Muchas gracias.
Thank you very much, Chair. We'd like to support Colombia. We think as appropriate might be a good solution for moving forward with this paragraph. We do think it is important that it's mentioned, but we don't need to return to the reference to nature. But we do agree with consistent approaches as long as it includes solutions. But in this case, we think it's better to maintain the brackets. Thank you.
Thank you. So I'll just hear from one more party. That'll be South Africa. South Africa, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. We'd like to support Brazil's earlier intervention. We think we've had extensive discussions about this text, so the best solution is to remove both examples as proposed by Brazil. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, the last party is Peru. Peru, let's hear from you, please.
Muchísimas gracias. Thank you very much, Madam Chair. We too would like to back what Colombia said. We entirely agree with Costa Rica with regard to the appropriateness of putting as appropriate. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So therefore, I am going to give you a little time for the parties to resolve. It was para 5 and para 9, so therefore we're going to add this too. So therefore, those parties who intervene for this, I wanted you to give you 20 minutes to come up with a resolution. If you cannot, then we're moving forward with the brackets if that's acceptable to the parties. So therefore, at this time, I'm going to give you the three groups 20 minutes, please, to come up with resolution text for para 5, for para 9, and for para 3 within annex. Is this acceptable? I see no request to the floor. Your time begins now, 20 minutes. It's 10 to 12. 10 past 12 will be your return point to the working group to bring your resolution text. Please. Thank you so much for agreeing. We will suspend for 20 minutes. You have 20 minutes. Please. Thank you. Thank you, parties. Thank you, parties. Let's take our seats so we can resume, please. Thank you. I greatly appreciate parties coming together to work out text. Let's start hearing our proposals and seeing where we're at and see how we move forward, because we need to move forward. So thank you. So we will first start looking at, I know that we've indicated the Para 9 team have indicated that they have some resolution text. So is it possible for me to ask the Para 9 team to come to request the floor, UK, and share that with us, and let's see what the parties think. Thank you. UK, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you to all our colleagues for the very constructive discussions. Ultimately, I think everyone was happy using the text with some amendments to what the UK had earlier suggested and which had been agreed after a very long debate yesterday, or in the item on capacity building. So that text would read as before: urges parties, comma, in accordance with Article 20, comma, and invites other governments and organisations in a position to do so, comma, to provide financial and technical support, comma, as appropriate, comma, to enable developing country parties, comma, in particular least developing countries, small island developing states, as well as parties with economies in transition, to promote the research, technology transfer, monitoring and assessment of soil biodiversity. So I hope I've captured that correctly, but I'm sure colleagues will correct me if I haven't. Thank you, Chair.
And I thank you, UK. I will have the Secretariat read it to make sure we have it correctly. Secretariat.
Thank you, Chair. So the paragraph 9 would read, urge parties, comma, in accordance with Article 20, comma, and invites other governments and organizations in a position to do so, comma, to provide financial and technical support, comma, as appropriate, comma, to enable developing countries parties, comma, in particular least developing countries, comma, small island development states, comma, as well as countries with economies in transition, to promote the research, comma, technology transfer, comma, monitoring and assessment of soil biodiversity. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Secretariat. So we have heard this new proposal, and the team worked hard to getting it done, and we really appreciate everyone working on that. So may I ask the floor if Para 9, the newly reformulated Para 9, if that's acceptable? I see Micronesia. Micronesia, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Chair. Just a couple of technical suggestions. Number one, I think it should read Article 20 of the convention rather than just Article 20. And number two, I think the Secretary read out least developing countries, whereas I think it should be least developed countries. So those two technical corrections for the room's consideration, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Micronesia. So we have taken on those two additions. Is this newly reformulated with the technical edits made? Is this newly reformulated Para 9 acceptable to parties? I see no request for the floor. Para 9, newly formulated with technical changes, approved. Thank you. So we go back to para 5, and I'm asking those parties, it was Argentina and Egypt, I know others would have joined, to indicate if they had any resolution on para 5. Either party or another party. Can someone take the floor and indicate if any resolution was achieved? I see no requests for the floor. Egypt, yes, please.
I'm afraid, Madam Chair, that we couldn't resolve that issue regarding other managed ecosystems. And the rationale behind it, as I mentioned before, it is not in agriculture, but you still have other managed ecosystems like pastured lands and others. But we couldn't reach any agreement at all. So either we keep it in bracket or it is entirely up to you. We are very accommodating for any good response on that. Thank you.
Thank you, Egypt. So it will remain in brackets at this point. Let us hear what the group who very valiantly attempted to work on para 3 of the annex. Let us hear back from them. I see Japan. Japan, you have the floor.
It's not easy to remove the mask, more difficult than brackets. Thank you. I'm afraid that we haven't reached agreement as a previous team, but some countries or some participants requested me to report in this way, but with the other parties to respond. Many, at least not many, maybe more than several participants agree to keep this text in brackets, but most countries prefer having another session before sending to the higher level, because I believe there will be another discussion around lunchtime and others for targets that would address this issue. So the several participants believe that we shouldn't have the same fight here, there, and other places. That's why they prefer to keeping this in brackets, but not sending directly to high level if possible. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you so much for your wise counsel. Thank you for your team for working through this. So yes, so what I'm hearing is that we may need a little time for it to mature. And if it matures in another group, it will release whatever the resolution is for not only this document, but several areas within all the discussions for Working Group 1 and Working Group 2. So it'll be parked. So we will not move ahead to the L document stage. We are parking 5, para 5, and we are parking annex, the annex para 3. However, I still would like the parties to continue discussing para 5 because I know there's a way to resolve it. I know there is. I'm asking Argentina and Egypt to still lead it, but they need support. So please, supportive parties, can you please join them? They will work on it during lunch, or they will work on it at their appointed time, but I'm asking Argentina and Egypt to lead that, where we can resolve para 5, and you can contact us and let us know, yes, you've resolved it, and this is it, and then we'll come back to the working group with the resolved text for 5 at a later stage. And then when the discussion on para 3 regarding nature-based solutions, ecosystem-based approaches has been resolved in another forum, we will come back to it in that point. Is that an agreed way forward? So we're approving everything except para 5 and para 3 in the annex. I see Egypt. Egypt, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Can we just get the response of some countries now in a way that we may be able to solve the whole issue now? I mean, either you leave it or you delete the brackets. Just only get the feeling now. Maybe we will, or parties will be able to respond much better or in a positive way to help you, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Do you mean para 5, yes?
Para 5, yes.
Para 5. So you want to hear parties who are willing to work with yourself and Argentina to help resolve. Okay.
And listen to them as well, yeah.
Yes. So for now, I would like those people to raise their flags or, indicate on the, press their buttons if they're willing to work with Egypt and Argentina on resolving para 5. I know you just haven't thought about pressing your button, but I know you'll be pressing your button shortly. I thank UK. UK has pressed their button. I know there are others out there who will be willing to assist them in solving this. I see Switzerland and Ecuador, the EU. They're willing to help with them. Thank you. I'm sure from other regions they need support, so you will join them. But for now, those are the countries that will help. I see Peru. Peru has agreed to be part of that. Just want to make sure we have great regional representation in your group. Thank you. Thank you, Argentina and Egypt, for leading this process, because we know that there's resolution text for para 5. It's just the time to get it done. Thank you so much for agreeing to do that. Appreciate that. So the decision is now we'll park CRP 6, knowing that everything is approved except para 5 and para 3. And we'll come back to this in working group at a later date, and we will let you know when. Is that agreed? Great. I see no request to the floor, so we are parking para 6. Thank you. And now we're moving on, because we have no time to stand still, but thank you so much for your cooperation. We are moving on to CRP 1. On COP item 20A1, EBSAs in the Northeast Atlantic Ocean and adjacent areas. So we have CRP 1 in front of us. As you can see, we have a clean document. Therefore, I'm encouraging you, beseeching you, not to reopen any issues so that we can move forward with this document. We will be going through it para by paragraph. So let's all have CRP 1 in front of us. Yes, we're ready to go. Good. So we're beginning. It begins with the conference of the parties. See no request to the floor for that preambulatory bit. We move to para 1. Acknowledges that. I see no request to the floor. Move to para, so that para 1 is approved. Para 2 expresses its appreciation. I see no request to the floor for para 2. Para 2 is approved. Para 3 expresses its gratitude. I see no request to the floor. Para 3 is approved. Para 4 welcomes the summary reports. I see no request to the floor. Para 4 is approved. Para 5 requests the Executive Secretary. I see no request to the floor. Para 5 is approved. We have the addendum before us. I bring the addendum in its entirety before you for approval. And then we will look at the table. So the addendum, just the background, bring before you. I see no request to the floor. That's approved. I bring the table before you in its entirety. It has several pages. I see Iceland. You have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Iceland has supported the EBSA process since we started the preparations and adopted the decisions leading to the numerous regional workshops around the world. that have reviewed and evaluated scientific data and described over 300 areas already adopted by CARP as EBSA descriptions and transmitted to the depository. This has been a successful scientific process and an important first step for the conservation of biological diversity in marine areas beyond national jurisdictions. Iceland is initiating a national process to identify areas within the national jurisdiction for conservation of biodiversity and ecosystem services. We participated in a workshop in Sweden that prepared the EBSA descriptions for the Northwest Atlantic Ocean, and we support this decision and the inclusion of the 17 descriptions into the repository. Before adopting the decision, Madam Chair, we would like to suggest a minor adjustment to the text on the location of area number 16, the Southern Atlantic Ridge description, to better reflect the situation of the area. Madam Chair, we are almost finished decorating the Christmas tree, and I know I do not sound like Santa Claus, bringing only joy to the session. But on the first bullet point after location, we would like to insert the following text to read, if I may, Madam Chair. It would be situated partly on the continental shelf of Iceland, comma, and then continue with the original text. This wording is in line with descriptions of many areas already in the depository. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Iceland. So therefore, I'm bringing before you the table in its entirety with the insertion from Iceland on 16, page 8. I bring the EU, they have a request for the floor. EU, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We would just like to highlight the important work the report contains, and which we warmly welcome. We would like to thank the CBD Secretariat and all contributing experts for their efforts in producing this excellent workshops report. The important achievement has significantly contributed to improved knowledge of Northeast Atlantic marine ecosystems. This knowledge is valuable and dear to us and will be important in many ways. As important as this process is, we reiterate that the description of EBSAs is a geographical description, not a legal one or any other kind. We therefore underline that the outcomes of the EBSA process do not prejudice any sovereign rights or jurisdiction of coastal states or the rights of other states. In respecting them, we do think that political aspects should not be included in the EBSA process. The EBSA process is and should continue to be a strictly scientific and technical exercise. We note that the Secretariat has now convened 15 workshops, and we have 321 EBSAs around the globe, around the planet ocean. We look forward to welcoming another 17 in the draft report, bringing the total number to 338. These special places of the ocean certainly help us better understand the marine world on which we all depend. Having said that, we would like the inclusion in this statement in the report. Thank you.
Thank you, EU. Your statement will be noted in the working group report. Thank you. So therefore, I bring before you the table with the insertion as indicated earlier by Iceland for your approval. I see no request for the floor. The table is approved. Therefore, the entire addendum is approved. Therefore, the entire CRP 1 is approved. I see that we have the UK. They would like to make and take an intervention. You have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. The United Kingdom strongly supports the EBSA process, and we recognise its value in utilising scientific and technical expertise to aid countries in identifying and describing areas of particular importance for biodiversity to inform conservation and management decisions. The United Kingdom strongly supports the EBSA process and welcomes this description of an EBSA in the area of the Hatton and Rockall Banks and Basin. We welcome the ongoing discussion of modalities to describe and modify EBSAs through Subsidy Recommendation 2410, and we plan to continue our engagement in these discussions to ensure clarity with regard to the process by which EBSAs are identified going forward. We have uploaded a statement and would like to have this reflected in the report. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, UK. Your statement will be reflected in the report. Thank you. So therefore, we are approving CRP 1 and an L document we were prepared for consideration by the COP. Thank you. Just a minute, please. So therefore, we'll now turn our attention to CRP 9 on COP item 20B, conservation and sustainable use of marine and coastal biodiversity. So CRP 9. As the contact group chairs have explained, the contact group met on the 8th, 9th, and the 10th of December and had productive discussions on these issues. However, there are a small number of brackets remain in the conference room paper, specifically in preamble of paragraph 2 and in paragraphs 2, 7, 10, 11, 13, and 22. I hope that delegations were able to use the intervening period since the contact group to find agreement on this bracketed text. We will now go through CRP 9, para by para. So we have CRP 9 in front of us, conservation and sustainable use of marine and coastal biodiversity. It begins with the conference of the parties. So we take that preamble to a paragraph along with the one that says recalling its decisions. I see no request to the floor, so that bit is approved. Now looking at the preambulatory paragraph with recognizing, I see that we have approach and principle in brackets. I see that we have a request to the floor. Ecuador, you have the floor, followed by Egypt.
Thank you, Chair. Durante el grupo de contacto
The contact group looked at the text, including national jurisdiction. However, this part, we found an agreement, and we decided to maintain this wording in brackets. In the wording presented by the Secretary, we don't see the brackets, so we'd like to have the brackets put back in as the contact group agreed. Thank you.
Can you clarify where exactly, please, so I have it right? Thank you. Can you come back? Ecuador, yes, please.
Yes, thank you. Is at the end of second line after the comma is including in areas beyond national jurisdiction. From the comma after biodiversity and the comma before applying.
Thank you. So we have two areas in brackets, the including in areas beyond national jurisdiction and the approach versus principle in brackets. So let's look at this. So including in areas beyond national jurisdiction, I want to hear parties' views on having this in brackets versus having this not in brackets. Can I hear parties' views? Egypt?
Thank you, Madam Chair. As far as I understand, we're still in the second paragraph, but recognizing precautionary approach and principles. Is it finished or?
No, this is exactly where we are. Exactly where we are. Ecuador had indicated that he had proposed during the contact group that that part that begins on the second line, including areas beyond national jurisdiction, be in brackets. That's what he's indicated.
We are not in favor of that.
Okay, so you wish that it was not bracketed?
No, not at all.
Okay.
But certainly, we wish to remove the brackets after precautionary approach and principle. We could use both of them, approach and principle together. Then we can delete the brackets.
Do you have okay, thank you. Thank you, Egypt. May we hear from UK followed by Brazil, please?
Thank you, Chair. We would have a strong preference for precautionary principle over precautionary approach. We consider that the precautionary principle has become an international principle of law. On the other brackets you're referring to, I do not recall brackets being there during the contact group, but we would not support there being brackets around including in areas beyond national jurisdiction. Thank you.
Thank you, UK. May we hear from Brazil, followed by the EU, then the Philippines. Brazil, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Brazil recalls that we decided to keep the brackets, and we would prefer not to having this text, since we believe that paragraph 4 and 22 of the Convention does not mandate us to referring to beyond national jurisdiction. And regarding the bracket referring to approach and principle, we would prefer approach. Thank you.
Thank you, Brazil. Let's hear from the EU, followed by the Philippines and Australia. EU?
Thank you, Madam Chair. We do not also recall having any brackets around the first one here, including areas beyond national jurisdiction, and we would prefer to keep that in without brackets. On the principle and approach, we would like to support the UK position, and we would like to keep principle in here. Thank you.
May we hear from thank you. May we hear from the Philippines, Australia, then Iceland. Philippines.
Thank you, Madam Chair. On the areas beyond national jurisdiction, we also do not support putting this in brackets, and we want to maintain this text in this paragraph. And between approach and principle, we would also choose principle. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll hear from then Australia, Iceland, Colombia, and then Japan. I know your mic is not working, so hopefully you'll be able to ask for the party near to you to use their mic, perhaps. All right, thank you, Australia. You have the floor.
Thank you. So we support retaining a reference to areas beyond national jurisdiction in this paragraph. I just note that in the first line, we are referring to competent intergovernmental organisations and the need for collaboration with those organisations. So there are intergovernmental organisations with competence in areas beyond national jurisdiction. We think it's appropriate to recognise here that we need to collaborate with them. On the issue of precautionary approach or precautionary principle, our preference is for precautionary approach, which accords with our understanding of the status of that approach at international law. Thank you.
Thank you. So we hear from Iceland, followed by Colombia, then Japan. Iceland.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Iceland, like some others, would like to retain including in areas beyond national jurisdiction without the bracket. And then we, in the fourth line, we like to keep principle. precautionary principle. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. So let us hear from Colombia, followed by Japan, then Canada. Colombia.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to echo the interventions that have been made. We would like to keep including in areas beyond our national jurisdiction without brackets, and we would like to support keeping principle. Thank you.
Okay, let's see if we can hear from Japan. Now, yes, I see the list is growing, so we'll have to stop the list because the idea then is to figure out which parties are going to work together to come up with a compromise text for that preemptive paragraph, because that would be the way I would suggest moving forward. So let's just hear for those on the list now, and then we will decide, we'll make a decision. Okay, so we'll hear from Canada, then Japan, hopefully, followed by Nicaragua, then South Africa. Canada, let's hear from you, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think the approach and principle issue probably will be one of those issues that will be resolved in one place and then taken up in a variety of others. So accordingly, we'll wait for that. I think I just wanted to comment on Canada is quite comfortable with keeping the including in areas beyond national jurisdiction for the very reason that my honourable colleague from Australia had noted that this is about collaborating with the competent intergovernmental bodies, organizations, and as we just approved that workshop, that workshop report, we know that there is data in areas beyond national jurisdiction that in the previous references to decisions, CBD, it does forward to the competent international organization. So in summary, Chair, we see this reference as really just stating a factual statement and would prefer to retain it there.
So I know that Japan needs to have the floor. Japan, are you able to take the floor? Because I know, okay, you're able to take the floor. So what party is that? Nicaragua. Nicaragua, okay. So Japan and Nicaragua spot. You may take the floor, please.
Okay. So thank you, Madam Chair, for giving me the floor. And I'm not sure why our microphone is not working. But anyway, so I'd like to, so Japan, like Brazil and Australia, Japan supports the wording of the precautionary approach as it is the agreed language in the 1992 Rio Declaration on Environment and Development. So I understand there is no internationally agreed definition of the precautionary principle. Therefore, Japan prefers the wording of the precautionary approach. Thank you.
Thank you, Japan. We'll just hear from South Africa and then New Zealand. South Africa, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Similar to Japan and others, we prefer the language of the Rio Declaration approach over principle. Thank you.
Then New Zealand, the last, please. Can we hear from you, please?
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. New Zealand would just like to add its support for retaining the text on included areas beyond national jurisdiction. I think Article 5 clearly provides for the cooperation with bodies in that regard. We can be more flexible on the precautionary principle or approach.
Thank you very much. So therefore, just give us a second. I'm going to ask the Secretary to read out a possible solution for the first area that's in brackets, and then we will hear your thoughts on that. Thank you, Secretary.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Again, this is just a suggested possible compromise text that parties may find useful. Regarding the text of including in areas beyond national jurisdiction, considering the intent of the paragraph a possible compromise text could be including with organizations with competence in areas beyond national jurisdiction. So it would read, recognizing the need to strengthen cooperation and collaboration with competent intergovernmental organizations in support of the conservation and sustainable use of marine and coastal biodiversity, including with organizations with competence in areas beyond national jurisdiction.
So therefore, I'm asking the parties with the reformulation or replacement of this, is this something that we could live with, those parties that oppose the removal of the brackets? Is this something that we could live with in the replacement? Ecuador and then Egypt. Ecuador, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. Sí, estamos de acuerdo.
Yes, we would agree with the suggestion by the Secretariat. Thank you.
Thank you, Egypt. Egypt and then EU. Egypt.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We also agree with the Secretariat for this. After all, there are a lot of activities going on now, and we expect in the future the new Convention on the Conservation of Marine Biodiversity beyond national jurisdiction. So we have to keep in mind the future as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Egypt. Then we can hear from the EU, please. EU.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Secretariat, for this proposal. We can see and appreciate the intent with it. We are slightly concerned it changes the scope and it then focuses on on these other organizations rather than the conservation and sustainable use of marine and coastal biodiversity. So we're slightly reluctant, but open if we can hear a little. Perhaps this is solvable in terms of focus here. So we're slightly reluctant. Thank you.
Let's hear for another possible suggestion. Secretariat.
Thank you again, Madam Chair. Of course, we're in the hands of parties, but with respect to this question that was just raised, another option could be to use that same formulation that I had earlier read out and shift this text to come immediately after competent intergovernmental organizations rather than after marine and coastal biodiversity. Thank you.
I see EU nodding, but what about Ecuador and Egypt? Is this something that is okay? I see Egypt. Egypt, you have the floor.
Yes, Madam Chair. This is much better, actually, if you move it a little bit further. Yes, as suggested by the Secretariat. It would be much, much better.
Thank you. And then what about Ecuador? Ecuador, can I see? Ecuador, yes, you have the floor.
También estamos de acuerdo. Muchas gracias.
We also agree. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So therefore, perhaps we can resolve at least those brackets with that formulation. So for that part, I ask if that's okay with parties with that new formulation. I see no request for the floor, so therefore we're back to deciding between approach or principle or an entirely different word. And I'm very aware that this went through the contact groups and it was discussed at length. And we have to find a resolution text because we don't necessarily want to take this to another level. We want to clean this up and come up with a resolved approach. So I'm open to hearing resolution text because I know parties have very clearly said they would like one versus the other, but we need to have some resolution text. I'm open to hearing some ideas of what that could be, because I know that we're capable of working through this and coming up with what would be something that we could all live with. So therefore, I'll let you, I see Egypt. Egypt, you asked for the floor. Egypt.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It is a compromise. I mean, some parties don't like the principle because the approach itself is already within the conventions. Others still consider the principle. So we are in favor of adding both of them, principle and approach as well. That can make everyone happy. It is a compromise text. Thank you.
Thank you, Egypt. So therefore, what I'm hearing you say is remove the brackets from both approach and principle, and then have either what I'm not sure, it's either approach and the principle, or is it approach / principle, so parties can choose. But we need to remove the brackets, so we have to find a way of resolving this. I see South Africa, who is coming forward with a ready solution. So thank you, South Africa. You have the floor.
Thanks, Madam Chair. We think for the compromise to potentially work, we would need to say, and the precautionary approach or the precautionary principle. I think we would need to separate. So precautionary approach or the precautionary principle, not a precautionary approach / principle or something like that. Thanks, Madam Chair.
Thank you, South Africa, for that option. So how do parties feel about putting that, the precautionary and the precautionary approach, or the precautionary principle? I see Australia and then Mexico, so I am excited to hear what other ideas people have to bring resolution to this. So thank you for volunteering for Australia. You can go, and then followed by Mexico. So Australia, you have the floor.
Thank you. So as already indicated, we think the precautionary approach is an approach. We have heard views from others, they regard it as a principle. Our suggestion would be to refer to the precautionary approach, comma, considered by some parties to be the precautionary principle. So we have a reflection of those views, that there is a divergence of views amongst parties about what it is.
Perhaps as a footnote, maybe, when maybe we would say in the text, the precautionary approach or the precautionary principle, and we have a footnote to say that there were divergent views as to which one would be better for the parties. Maybe with that, is it something like this that you're suggesting, Australia?
So our suggestion was to refer to the precautionary approach and then have in the text, comma, considered by some parties to be the precautionary principle.
Okay, so you prefer it in the text as opposed to a footnote. Okay, thank you for that idea. All right, so we have Mexico and South Africa coming back with more ideas on how to resolve this. Thank you. So Mexico, let's hear from you. Mexico.
Gracias. Thank you, Madam Chair. What we're going to say here is that if we look at the text of Principle 15, which says in English, in order to protect the environment, precautionary approach shall be widely applied at the states. If we look at that, we can understand that approach is the focus or the action of application from the principle. And from that point of view, we would be more on the side of using the word approach.
I understand Mexico, but we're trying to figure out what's the best way so all parties can move ahead with this. I know people are firmly on the approach side and people are firmly on the party side, and that's great. But we now have to figure out what text we can say where both are mentioned so all parties can move forward with this. This is what we're trying to do, to achieve. So therefore, I know that South Africa had the suggestion, writing the precautionary approach or the precautionary principle. I know that Australia came up with another suggestion to indicate that it is also, the approaches could also be met by precautionary principles, so then at least both parties can take it. So this is how we want to move forward. So South Africa, I see you have the floor again to come up with even a better compromise. Thank you. You have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We think that Australia's proposal lends itself very nicely to a footnote. So a precautionary approach in the text in line with the convention text, as Mexico said, and the footnote as considered by some as a principle or something like that. Thank you, Madam Chair.
I see Mexico saying, okay, they could live with that. And I see Australia said, yes, yes, we can work to that. So let's hear from Japan. Okay, great, your mic is working. So Japan, then followed by the EU, with great ideas coming forward. Thank you, Japan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So Japan supports Australia and South Africa. So the text of the precautionary approach and on the preamble and the wording of some parties prefers principle in the footnote. Thank you.
Thank you, Japan. Let's hear from the EU. EU.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I see we're sort of approaching a compromise here that we could possibly support. And the footnote idea that you voiced seems like a good way forward. We could also change it around so that the precautionary principle as an overarching principle then comes before the approach, which is the more applied part of it. So that would be a suggestion, but otherwise we see we are approaching a compromise here. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, EU. So therefore, it seems that we have, what I'm hearing is that we would have so you want to read it? Are you able to? Yes. So we'll have the Secretary read out the possible variation, and we'll see if we can get agreement on this. Thank you.
Well, am I reading what? Thank you, Madam Chair. What's currently being considered is applying the ecosystem approach and the precautionary approach with a footnote to the word approach after precautionary, and the footnote would read, considered by some parties to be the precautionary principle. Thank you.
Now, at EU, I know you wanted to have maybe principle up there and approach down there, but then we might have to go back to having both of them in the text so that both sides of the floor who are concerned with it have their concerns noted and strongly reflected. So therefore, I ask to be flexible. I ask flexibility on this. And so therefore, if that footnote is not appropriate, then we put everything in the text and say precautionary approach and or precautionary principle in the text. So therefore, I want to know how we can move forward on this. And I think we need to get this resolution on its way out the door. So let's hear from, I think Canada had a great idea as to how to move forward. Canada, you have the floor.
No, Chair, actually, just to support. I think what has been proposed from the podium is certainly something that does reflect that there's a divergence of views and something that we could certainly support.
Sorry, give me a minute, please. Okay, so to move this along, we're suggesting then that we have and the precautionary approach and or principle and or the precautionary principle, and we have a footnote to say that there were divergent views on how parties interpret the terms approach and principle. So I see that folks are coming back. I see Chile. Chile, you have the floor, followed by Australia.
Muchas gracias.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. We'd like to support the view espoused by Canada. We think it could be a footnote that then reflects the divergence of opinions, but there is some practical merit there in that, indeed, we can reflect the two positions that are in the room, and then, of course, that would be reflected in the text. So we support the suggestion of a footnote, as you mentioned. Thank you.
And then lastly, Australia, please. Australia, you have the floor.
Thank you. We think the suggestion read out from the podium initially with the footnote is the preferable way to proceed. I don't think having precautionary approach and or principle in the text quite accurately captures the nature of the disagreement. So that sounds as though there are two options for parties. They can either apply the precautionary approach or the precautionary principle, and I don't think that's what we're trying to suggest. Rather, we're trying to communicate the fact that there is a divergence of views about whether the precautionary principle is a principle that exists. So that divergence is better reflected if we refer to precautionary approach in the text with a footnote indicating considered by some parties to be a principle.
Thank you. Give me a minute, please. Okay, so I'm going to ask, what if we go back to that approach that Australia suggested, put approach in the text and refer for the footnote regarding the divergence of views and speaking about that? I don't want to be going back and forth, but we need to come to a resolution on this. We are running out of interpretation time. Japan, and then followed by the UK. Japan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So Japan supports the previous statement by Australia. So the text, the precaution approach, and the precaution principle in the footnote. Thank you.
Thank you. So I'm asking the parties to, if they can accept this, please. And this a way of moving forward with this. I'm asking the parties to give us some flexibility and use this way of moving forward. I see UK. UK, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. We support Australia's interpretation of the issue at hand here, and we can be flexible to have a footnote so that approach is in the text and principle is referenced in the footnote. Would you mind if the Secretariat could read the footnote proposed again, just so we can check that it is aligned with our thinking?
Yes, please. Secretary.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So the phrase would read as follows: applying the ecosystem approach and the precautionary approach, with a footnote on the word approach. That footnote would read, considered by some parties to be the precautionary principle. Thank you.
Thank you. So we'll just hear from Philippines and EU to round this out, please. Philippines, followed by the EU.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We also support the formulation proposed by Australia, and we are flexible with having principle in the footnote. Thank you.
Thank you. Going back to the EU.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think we can also slightly reluctantly, but in the spirit of compromise, support the Australian proposal. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your flexibility. I appreciate that. So therefore, moving forward with this proposal for that preambulatory paragraph, starting with recognizing, is that the way we can go? Can we approve this paragraph considering the changes we have made with the footnote? I see no request for the floor, so that the preambulatory paragraph is approved. So we will come back after lunch, starting with acknowledging. However, during the lunch period, I think we will be assigning lunch work, because it's not homework, lunch work to folks to help us resolve some of the other paragraphs before we come again. I'll consult the contact group chairs to help us identify willing voluntary parties who will be anxious to come forward to help us resolve those paragraphs with brackets, which are in paragraph 2, 7, 10, 11, 13, and 22, because I know the parties do not want to move forward with brackets in their L documents, and I really appreciate your compromising and spirit and flexibility. So for this, we will adjourn now, but I'll ask the two co-chairs to come forward and we can identify willing, happy, exuberant parties who will help us moving forward during the lunch break. Thank you so much. We are adjourning this session until the afternoon. The session is adjourned.